Hello everybody, welcome back to the Overlap Breakdown podcast. I'm joined as always by my co-host Umir, who's a professional football scout and analyst, and we're back again to talk about the Premier League's action. And it's been a while since we've sat down together and gone through the Premier League's action. Obviously we've done a lot of reactive analysis. We've just had one go out on the Ipswich Manchester United game, which I hope you all enjoyed. And now we're just ready to cover the general
just catching up
flow,
a bit, you know?
the flow of the Premier League, because it's been non-stop in terms of kind of the games that are coming up, and we're entering the winter period, and it's only going to get worse.
We've got new managers since probably the last podcast.
New managers, there's people getting sacked, there's guys getting beat 4-0 at home. So, yeah, it's... we obviously covered both teams in separate pieces, and then we did a preview. And the majority of what we said come alive in the game, but it was massively intensified in a Spurs
100% agree.
In a Spurs kind of reflection.
And
I just wanted to get into it. Manchester City have faced the most shots on the counter-attack against per game in any season under Pep Guardiola. This is the most. They've conceded 1.2 shots from fast breaks per game, which is pretty rough for a Pep Guardiola team, because obviously he will not want any shots against him on the fast breaks, because that is where you can get at a Manchester City team. I wanted to ask you, at what point, I'm not going to say at what point is it a crisis, because I think it's...
I mean, I think you
are in a crisis. But did you even see that coming? Because I think when I watched the game, the start of the game, City played really well for 10-15 minutes and they were pinning Tottenham in. And then all of a sudden, some of the movement from Spurs is forward 5, forward 4 players. And I was just like, wow, they're cutting through the centre, creating massive gaps, forcing high turnovers. What did you make of the way City crumbled in the game?
I don't know. I think it's sort of been a pattern that we've seen for the last, through the games that we have been losing. The Sporting game comes to mind in particular, because in that game, I think we were really impressive again at the start of that game. Quite a few big chances that went amiss, we penned them in. And then as soon as, we didn't put away our chances on one end. And then we mentioned also the Bernardo Silva quote, I think in the Manchester City video, where, he's aware and is probably reflective of what the players are thinking, in the sense that, oh look, we take a few shots, really good chances, we miss them, and then it seems like every shot that we concede seems to go in as well. I think Bernardo said something of that manner. So it seems to be in the pattern of the games that we've seen recently. And I thought we were good, and we had big chances again against Spurs. We're not putting those away. I think a lot of onus is on Haaland to try and score those goals. There's not really the opportunity or the responsibility being taken by some of the players around him. I don't know if Phil Foden's got a goal so far in the Premier League this season. Guardiola usually pops up, and he had a couple moments again in this game, but I think we're looking at a Manchester City side that's low in confidence, even though we start games and we tend to play fairly well in possession, high up the field, in terms of exerting our pressure. The action in the boxes is where we suffer, and in that big sort of gap in the middle in that transition period. So, look, on another day, those 2 goals or whatever, those 2 big chances go in, and we're looking at a score that favours Manchester City in the same fashion. But if you don't put away your chances in the boxes, City are very susceptible to being got in those middle areas, I think.
Well, I made a joke about they look like a Ten Hag team last season. Because the
3-1-6,
it was just like so many people in the final third, but no press. 3 centre backs just sat there on their own.
Midfield can't,
and I was
win those duels.
I was actually shocked. I weren't as shocked as some people. We've often spoke about how Manchester City always get this tagline that it's Rodri, if Rodri's here, this doesn't happen. And whilst potentially that's true, these are issues that we've spoken about in general. And I think what people need to realise what's going on with City right now is that the physical flooring of the team has depleted so much from the past seasons, where they've had young, energetic midfielders.
I think it's partly based in a confidence and sort of mentality thing as well. De Bruyne came on for about 15 minutes. Older player, obviously we talk about this side as an ageing side, but even as an older player, when he came on, his actions. His passes had a bit of fizz on them.
Yeah.
He brought an intensity to the team that, one, lifted the crowd, but two, caused the other players to press harder, put their foot into tackles, and it had this really nice knock-on effect for the rest of the team.
Yeah.
I think there's a quote from Ruben Diaz years ago. It might be Ruben Diaz, I can't remember, but someone in the Manchester City team mentioned that, look, when you're seeing players like Kevin De Bruyne, these superstars, track back, win the ball, and put in this energy, you think to yourself, why am I not going to, emulate that?
Yeah,
yeah,
work
exactly.
as hard, yeah.
So seeing De Bruyne bring that back into the team was really nice. But, as much as the players look tired and a little bit fatigued and leggy, I think it's in part that there's some influence of mentality and that knock-on effect of raising that intensity.
Yeah, I think we've spoken about the personnel being an issue. But obviously, when we speak about the personnel, we're saying that it's not just the personnel, it's a wider issue. And I think one thing that I noticed about Manchester City very early on in the season, they've sort of changed this recently. Yeah. And we mentioned it in the piece before, but Manchester City have gone with a much more aggressive shape at the start of this season. So they're usually building up with just one deep midfielder and then the three behind, and then the second midfielder who was Rico Lewis in this game, or Phil Foden. It's been Kovacic, it's been other players like that in them central areas, Bernardo Silva. Yeah. They're pushing the second midfielder alongside the deeper midfielder, is pushing on very high, and then that's leaving a single pivot midfielder isolated in space. And when that single pivot midfielder is Gundogan or Kovacic, who are, as we mentioned before, aging, not as physically capable as a Rodri, for example. Do you put any, in my opinion, I do agree with all the Rodri stuff and the personnel stuff and the aging. I put quite a bit of the blame on Guardiola. Yeah, it sounds like, whoa, you can't say that. But I actually think I think it's a Guardiola fault. I think he's suffering from the same thing that other managers suffer from. Is like when you're missing the personnel, you don't want to completely change your ideas and scrap it and go to something completely different. But what he needs to assess really quickly is that Rodri's not going to be there this season. So he's like, you have to change now to save the rest of the season, because if it's held down like it is right now, like Gundogan and Kovacic aren't going to all of a sudden chop 5 years off their age limit and start running 15k a game. It's just not going to happen. So I put a lot of the blame down to the structure early on in the season. Straight away, I noticed that the Inter game was probably the most prominent occasion of that, the Brentford game. Them games give me an idea of, wow, City are far more aggressive in possession, and they're still trying to retain the ball well, and they're still trying to keep the ball circulating around. But I would just say, I'm not saying anything ridiculous, I'm just saying I think Pep Guardiola could do something, and I think he will do something. We mentioned in the preview, maybe putting a Kanji back in there. Obviously, it's an experiment that's been played with. He got Rico Lewis in there against Spurs, stuff like that. Would you agree that he doesn't have? It's not the blame. It's just he needs to change something, because what he has right now, in my opinion, is hurting City rather than.
Well, I think it's interesting. I think it's that sort of 3-1 shape that in rest defence can be got up for sure. Yeah. I think when you're looking at the team, in my head, whenever I see a Guardiola decision, I think, what's the rationale behind it? Because I just assume that he knows.
He knows everything.
Yeah, he knows everything.
He's like, can't make a mistake.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if I'm trying to rationalise for Guardiola in his tactics, I'm assuming by playing this sort of 3-1-6, one, they're trying to make up for the lack of goal threat they have in individual qualities. So we're not getting goals from our wingers. As much as Savinho's looked brilliant in 1v1 situations, I don't think he's scored in the league either. No. Doku, at times beats his man and gets in those situations. I think he has scored, but he's not that big goal threat, especially not arriving in the box.
Gundogan playing deeper.
I think at the beginning of the season, he played a little bit higher. Yeah. And I think in his first game, he had loads of chances. He was actually really brilliant.
He missed a couple. He was it was like trademark Gundogan getting into the box
and we've not seen something like that from him since. Obviously, with Kovacic's injury now, he has to sit deep, and I'm fine with that. Protects his legs a bit. But I assume by putting 6 across that line, you're pinning a lot of the players centrally with the likes of Rico Lewis, good small, space player. Foden as well, trying to attack those spaces. Bernardo pinning some players centrally. and you're getting Haaland freer. Obviously, there's a lot of crowding in that area, but you're trying to attract some players away from Haaland in that sense. So, like, the rationale could be you're trying to pin teams in so deep that you don't have to consider, having to defend those, opposition pushing you back as much as we have done in theory. Yeah. So, look, in theory, I understand it, but I completely agree in the sense that, like, when we do lose it, we are exposed in those situations. And I think Guardiola is probably banking on the fact that we've got, or we've had physical defenders at the back who can kind of mitigate for that. Yeah. I think in the game against Spurs, we saw Akanji probably out of frustration step up into midfield, make some challenges, things like that. I'd be happy to see Akanji push into those areas. I think we need Ruben Dias back because he provides that ability to step forward, apply pressure on the opposition's attackers. Kyle Walker usually is kind of a get-out-of-jail free card.
Not a great game.
In a 3-1 with Kyle Walker at his best,
I think it's a lot better than
but given it's hard. I think our team's unbalanced. We can play a 3-1 to try and mitigate for our weaker attack. Yeah. But in doing so, we've got a weak defence. And if we play with a 3-2, fine, we're a bit more stable at the back. But where
how
our
much
goals
possession can you have in the final third? How many chances?
Like where are we getting our goals from, kind of thing. When De Bruyne's back, I would happily opt for a 3-2-5. I think.
Yeah. So moving on to Tottenham in this game, because we've spoken a lot about City, but a lot has been made about City's downfall. But this was a massive game for Spurs, and the pressure was on, the lineup was bold, and this performance stipulated exactly why I love Ange Postecoglou and exactly why me and you have talked about him as being a top coach and standing by principles. And I just love it when I watch a team like this, and he will always give you a day out as an away fan. He will always give you that day. You can go to any ground in the world and Tottenham will go there and play the way they want to play.
They're actually better against
the better teams.
Top
away from home.
Yeah.
I remember the Arsenal game at the Emirates in Postecoglou's first season where they were building up right on the edge of the box, and it was just brilliant. And like we've spoken about numerous amounts of times, this is why I believe that he's a very, very good coach, and why I just don't believe...
Like, there's people talking about Ange in, Ange out. No. I think it was one of the most
bizarre,
stupidest conversation. If you're a Spurs fan, just get behind Ange, because the quality that he has, the bravery that he has, the exciting football that he brings. And by the way, people have this criticism about Ange as not being adaptable. Perhaps not against all teams, but look, against Manchester City,
there was a lot of good tweaks in this game.
And a system that he played longer into his front line.
Yeah, we did touch on that.
Yeah. He had some that protection from his midfield. He had those runners from deep, but he probably committed one less player to the attack than he has done in previous seasons. How they played from the back, they knew that they were a little bit weaker in perhaps their personnel, so they didn't risk it as much in deep build-up. Look, really adaptable and really impressive. Like, there's not much more to.
No, I thought it was a brilliant performance. I thought the two centre halves, like, coming into the game, I know they conceded two expected goals, and City probably should have scored, and it's maybe not as defensively strong as a performance as a 4-0. Yeah, a 4-0 kind of stipulates, but some of the passes I've seen from Ben Davies, like some of the movements.
I love Ben Davies. I've said this a million times.
Just like, he was so good in this game, and I loved Maddison's role in this game, not just because of the 2 goals he scored, but he was peeling off to the left-hand side, and we've spoken about this with Enzo Maresca's Chelsea, who do it a lot. But the number 8s who peel off to the wing and pick the ball, Hutchinson, we talked about in the analysis. I just think the 8s who peel out to the wing, pick the ball up on the line, and they've got no space to work with at all, but they just make something happen. And Maddison was just so good in this game at doing that. Kulusevski's done it all season. Cole Palmer's done it all season. Ødegaard's done it. These types of players were really good small space players who could drop in and out the pockets and just pick the ball up. I just thought he was absolutely brilliant. I thought Kulusevski was the best player on the pitch.
Yeah, probably shout for being one of the best this season.
Yeah, he is. He's been so consistent this season, and I think we spoke about it way earlier on in the season. But every time I watch him, he gets better. He's getting stronger.
And
he's
sort of
getting
a more
powerful.
Sort of traditional role for him, but a different role than what he's done.
Yeah, well, he's played inside, hasn't he? And then he played out on the right wing. And there was a clip that come out of him in the international break where he said to the Swedish players on international break, he was like, "I'm hungry, let's eat."
Yeah,
and he's in like the group huddle thing,
yeah,
and now he's sort of getting like this bite about him, this like robustness, this
he's
character.
a leader. I would say he's a leader.
Yeah, he's a leader
sure.
now.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's growing week by week. I think he's absolutely brilliant.
And it's not just his technical quality. One, he's really physical. He held and got separation from Guardiola numerous times. And Guardiola's a very physical player. And then on top of that, like I think he tops like so many of the running stats, at least for Spurs. I think in the league he's up there anyway, through playing down the middle, but in supporting his team defensively as well. So.
No, just brilliant. And I think Spurs deserve so much credit for this game. People have often spoke about how poor Manchester City were on defensive transition, but Tottenham are one of the best fast break teams in the league. I've got a stat here that Tottenham have got 2 of the top 6 most fast breaks against an opposition this season. So they had 6 against Manchester City and 5 against Manchester United. Yeah. So 11 fast breaks for Tottenham in Manchester. Doesn't happen often, that. No. But yeah, I just thought he's gone to both stadiums in Manchester. He's got 6 points. He's not conceded a goal. He's scored 7. It's a very, very strong performance. And what we're starting to see with Spurs now is the togetherness of the squad, the celebrations, what Maddison did in the crowd after it with his shirt and stuff like that. They're a really likeable team. They've got so many likeable players. Timo Werner off the bench was lightning. Brennan Johnson, back post again. Yeah. And it's just, I think it's really difficult as Spurs fans to stay with it. I
mean, if you lose to a team lower down the league, it's like, okay, look, with the players, with the quality that we have, we should be winning. But I suppose games like this, not necessarily make that worth it, but...
If I was a fan and we had games like this where Spurs have done this a few times now, not just to Manchester City, but to other big oppositions. For example, against my club when he beat us. If my team went there and they showed the capability to do that and played that well, and then played with that fearlessness and that attitude to just constantly keep going and play such a fast attacking brand of football, I'd be sat here as a fan going, all right, I've seen it now. Yeah. I don't need to see anything else. Like, I've seen it. I've seen my team go there. We've played against the best in the world. We've knocked Manchester City for 4. We did it in the way we wanted to do. Yeah. And I'd just sit there as a fan and just be like, perfect, let's move, let's keep going. But
I think the only, the qualm with Spurs against low block teams, I think a lot of unlocking low block teams is just sheer player quality.
And Pep says that a lot.
Yeah, once you give Ange a couple of windows, you sign those players, some of the players that he's already signed, have the time to develop some of that quality. I think you'll start winning more games against those teams. Especially look, now we're seeing a bit of balance in terms of the profiles in rest defence for Ange against those teams as well. So look, I think some things resemble a little bit of Klopp's first season a little bit.
Of course.
Fast break style, some vulnerabilities against low block teams, but I think they're on the right trajectory. They're a really impressive side.
We're going to move on to a club now who, have just started the new trajectory. Ipswich won, Manchester United won. This was a very interesting game. Obviously, we have done the analysis piece.
I think in the first couple of minutes, United fans thought, wow, this is it.
Wrong-footed right wing-back, running down the line. I thought it was going to go from wing-back to wing-back, and I thought it was going to be like the perfect Amorim goal. It was Rashford down the middle, Amad Diallo on the right-hand side of the wing-backs, and it almost looked tailor-made to what
Bruno's
he
role in
that
do. Goal, by the way, really, again, peeling from that sort of number 10 position into the flanks. It's hard for teams to... match numbers in those wide areas when one of the central players move into those areas. So like we spoke about Palmer, Hutchinson as well. I think Bruno did that really nicely for that goal.
Yeah, I think everyone's speaking about Manchester United, and we've spoke about Manchester United a lot. But I just thought Ipswich were outstanding in this game.
Yeah, for a team that's been promoted, look how clean their shape is.
Everything was just crystal clear. Like, they had so much of the ball against us in the first half. Yeah. They made possession count. They created chances from the possession. Out of possession, they're an absolute monster at home. Yeah. I think people forget when Liverpool went there in the first 45 minutes, and that was Arne Slot's first game. Yeah. In the first 45 minutes, they were battering Liverpool. They were on them like a rash. And it took Salah and Trent and a half-time change from Slot to flip the game on its head and take charge of the game. And when you go to Ipswich, I'm not making excuses for Manchester United. They should have won the game. Ipswich are currently in the relegation zone. But it's a game where they feel a bit different. They
Yeah.
feel like, wow, it's a lot harder to go there than Southampton or Leicester.
Yeah.
And I think they've, in my
Although
opinion,
Southampton gave us a game.
yeah, that's a good point actually. I mean, Manchester United won there, so
Yeah.
I'm not too sure, but yeah, just a really good performance from Ipswich. I think the press is really good. I think some of the players they've got are outstanding. Amorim, Hutchinson, Liam Delap, Leif Davis, who was really good at.
Morsey was tidy in there.
Yeah,
as well.
Morsey's tidy. Sammy Smodics. It's just it's a really good collection of players. It was nice to see Ange play against Manchester United.
Yeah.
And he just looked so much bigger.
Yeah, I really like when players who kind of are on the fringes find like a place where they can.
Yeah, they're just settled. And I think that role, how we've got it set up on the board, that role where he's like right centre half of the free on the ball is like exactly where every Man United fan wanted him to be. Yeah. So no, I'm really happy for him, really happy for McKenna. I think they're a brilliant side. Before we move on from this game, I just wanted to talk to you about the quotes that Amorim come out with in this game. I think we're going to speak. I want to speak to you about two. Mm-hmm. The first one was the media duties one.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you about this. So he said that he's done more press conferences in the first week at Manchester United.
Answered more questions.
He answered more questions in the first week at Manchester United than he ever did in his 3 years at Sporting, or 4 years at Sporting. And that is, I'm not sure if you watched the Sky Sports interview, but he was angry. Yeah. He looked fuming. Yeah. And I'm not worried for him because I think you have to do press conferences, like it's obviously a thing, but I think he will probably end up sending like an assistant and stuff like that.
The football manager spiel.
Yeah. I think Eric Ten Hag liked the interviews. Yeah. So there was a report that come out about Eric Ten Hag declining the opportunity for Steve McLaren to take the cup press conferences. Yeah. So he liked the connection with the journalists and liked keeping them close. And when he was really good, he had a really good connection with it. And then when he was bad, he cut off loads of journalists and stuff like that.
Well, I think he appreciated the influence that they do have.
Yeah, so I think he wanted to keep them close, like enemies closer kind of thing. But yeah, it was... Amorim was trying to get a lot across in these interviews, and he was really, really not happy with the performance, obviously, but the character, the mentality of some of the players. He keeps mentioning that people keep focusing on the system, and he's getting wound up that people are constantly asking him about the 3-4-3 or the 5-2-3 or the 3-2-5.
I think we're in a period where like the general sphere of football, it's like.
It does not matter.
No, but people are appreciating tactics more, but they're not appreciating tactics for exactly what they are. So then you get this disconnect. If there's people who, disregard tactics at all, they're just watching it as fans, cool. Like a coach who's really invested in how a team plays, they're not going to care because they can say, look, that guy, he just wants us to play good football. Yeah. Now, when there's people who kind of want to appreciate tactics for what they are, but they don't fully understand them, then I can understand that there's some annoyance from Amorim. I think the quotes in general, I feel bad for him, but I think
bad, but
at Manchester United,
he knows what the beast is.
Yeah. Maybe when you're living it, it's different. And you kind of expect it anyway. But at Manchester United, I think it's only going to get worse. Yeah,
it only gets worse. And I think I've actually spoken to a few people about this. But with the amount of European games and the cup games now, you do a pre and post for every single game.
I think you're talking every day of the week.
You play 3 times in 7 days and you do a pre and post. You're being interviewed 6 out of 7 days. Yeah. That is crazy.
And also before and after the games themselves.
Yeah, they have the embargoes which go out the day after. Yeah. So you're answering all these questions and then you're doing it for multiple different media outlets.
And there's aggregated Twitter accounts that basically take every sentence you say.
And the club want them as well. It's like they do sit down interviews with the club. Yeah. And it's like I wish, to be honest, they should just throw players into the pre and post now and just sit the players down for 5 minutes and go. Like they do in the Champions League, but without a manager. And
imagine every word scrutinised and is taken out of context and is put on.
And it's not his first language.
Yeah, and you've got it on like a tweet where it's just words. You don't.
I used to feel for Eric Ten Hag with that because I always said this, but like always watch Ten Hag's interview clips before reading the quote. Yeah, because it's just like you have to make sense of what they're saying, and it's so hard. And then obviously the second quote was the overthinking. Yeah. So he said his players were. Obviously, new ideas come into it, and they were constantly thinking whilst the game was going on where they need to be, what position they need to be in.
Expected at the start.
And he made that point very clear, and I think he made it clear in the interview before the game that he wants his players to play with this freedom, and there's so much onus on the shape and the restrictions in the shape and all that, and it's like he doesn't care for the structure that much on the ball. He wants to play with freedom. He wants to play with this kind of fluidity.
I think more than anything, he wants to see his principles actioned subconsciously. Yeah. So, I mean, we've already spoken about this a little bit, but in how they press when the ball goes back to the opposition's third, you know, the midfielders jumping on their respective mans, the centre backs pushing up as well, or if the ball goes into a wide area, you know, the inside forward spinning in behind. Yeah. You don't want to have that delay where you receive the ball and you're thinking, okay, look, Amorim's told me I need to do this. I'm looking for the player now. You kind of want it to be automatic and free flowing, and that takes just sheer repetition, to be honest. Like, you're not going to get that in the first game anyway.
No, but he's Bodo Glimt is his first home game, and then he's got Everton next week, which is going to be 2 games which Manchester United are highly likely going to have a lot of the ball. Yeah. Hopefully he can let his principles go, like give the team a bit of confidence to push on and get 6 points in them 2 games and get off to a little bit of a run. But we'll see a lot more in the next 2 games, I'm sure, because it's a very tricky game, Ipswich away, even though they're in relegation. So, so as we said before, we've got a full analysis piece out on this game and on Ruben Amorim's first game and what we found out from it. So we're not really going to speak too much on the tactics and the elements of the game. I want to kind of move on from this. If you want to see the entire full analysis, then that's already up on the channel. And we're going to move on now into Arsenal 3, Forest 0. Yeah. This is a game where Arsenal were a lot better.
They're back.
They're back, and it only took Martin Ødegaard to come back into the side. And it was a game where Arsenal got the rhythm again, got the smoothness about them, and in the first half especially,
looked quite different, to be honest.
It did. The right side of Timber, Saka, and Ødegaard was just brilliant. I thought all 3 of them played so well. And I just thought Bukayo Saka, normal service resume for him, kind of coming back into the team. Yeah. Crazy finish on his left-hand side. And I think...
Yeah. I mean, he carried the ball all the way into the
all the way across the box.
Areas. I think I've tweeted about it, we've spoken about it as well, like, when you compare certain players, the fact that Saka is as good as he is restricted to that right-hand side, you see that goal that he scored against Forest coming into those central areas. If he was given a lot more ball responsibility, the ability to, you know, play freely down the middle when he wanted to, I think he'd actually put up greater numbers than he has, especially in scoring. You know, maybe his assists might go down a little bit, but we'd see, I'd love to see a sort of complete
like a higher
Saka, right down the middle. But really impressive, that strength to hold players off. Like, one of the strongest players for his size and for his position in the league, for sure. Yeah,
he bounces off players, doesn't he, when he's in the box?
Really,
he takes contact and he just doesn't move. Yeah. And it's like, it's brilliant. Yeah, obviously, now the players with 60 goal involvements across the past 3 seasons in the Premier League is Erling Haaland, Mohamed Salah and Bukayo Saka. Cool. And that is probably the conversations that he's now in, knocking on the door for them conversations. I think he's a brilliant player.
I think in general conversation, he probably gets underrated, bizarrely.
Oh yeah, like in the general rating of where he belongs. Yeah. It's like you go into a game and you kind of already go, right, they've got Bukayo Saka, that's a goal. Yeah. Like, he's got the similar thing with Salah.
We got to put two guys on him.
Yeah, two guys on him, and I think that's something that people did with Salah, with Erling Haaland. Now you're going into games and you're like, if he doesn't score or assist, we've got a chance here, where they hold so much weight and so much emphasis of the team on themselves, and they deliver all the time, and it's brilliant. Ødegaard being back, we often touched on how Arsenal were maybe getting a bit too robust and becoming somewhat of a bulldozer-like team.
Not being able to play through the middle.
Not being able to play through the blocks in the tight spaces, and we saw it in the games against, who did they play in the Champions League?
They played Inter.
The Inter game. So they couldn't really find the players in the pockets. And Ethan Nwaneri come on, and he was
brilliant player.
He was the pocket player in that game, and I seen 10 minutes of it, and I was like, right, it's very clear that Arsenal can't get between the lines and make it fit. And I don't even think it's not Ødegaard's. I've spoken about this before. It's not Ødegaard's creativity that Arsenal miss. It's so much more than that.
Well, he drives the press, leads the press. Yeah. And in terms of winning those second balls in that area, you're not just getting somebody who sweeps up in there, but you've also got someone who can pick up on the half turn. I think one of the main concerns that I had about Arsenal was without a player who could pick up and turn sort of all in one motion, they had to kind of play a couple passes to get the ball facing forwards at the opposition goal.
Yeah.
And that obviously delayed things. But also just his intelligence, the goal threat that he offers in the middle, the space that it now facilitates for Bukayo Saka. The team that we saw for Arsenal actually against Forest had a lot of the players who are more suited to breaking down like a settled low defence. Jorginho in there, tidy, Calafiori, Timber, Odegaard. So Trossard again on that wing. So a very different team. But Odegaard's influence there really shining through, I think.
Yeah, I just think it's a small space. I think he's one of the best small space players in the league. What he can do in such a short amount of time is brilliant.
But also, I like him outside of the block as well. He doesn't have to be
with range.
Face up and
I just think he has these moments where he stood on the box and he just picks these little tight knit through balls. Like everything's just like 5-10 yards, and it's just he breaks things. He comes back out and then he goes back in, and then he can squeeze a ball through, and then he can loft something to the back post. So I just think his overall influence on Arsenal's possession he makes him their most important player for them to function as a system.
Against the low block.
Yeah, against the low blocks. I think when we're talking about Bukayo Saka is getting all the goals, all the assists. Like he's doing everything for that team.
Yeah.
But in terms of like an overriding say on the way the entire thing functions.
Well, Odegaard's almost
mean?
like Arteta's voice on the pitch.
Yeah, kind of he kind of stimulates everything.
I would say
about the team.
Personally, I think Saka is better for Arsenal than Odegaard. But Odegaard reflects what the philosophy of Arsenal is trying to be more.
That's what I feel like, and I feel like he has everything about him as an Arsenal player. And
one thing I'll quickly mention before we move on is Odegaard. We talk about players controlling the tempo of the game. And we often associate that with players slowing down the game.
Yeah.
What I think Odegaard does really well is speed the game up in his actions. And
that's the small space, and it just goes from 0 to 100 so fast.
When the ball comes to him, might receive it on his right foot, hit it on the left foot, all in one motion.
Yeah.
And it's similar to De Bruyne speeding up the team in his action. So more of a global influence on the team in that sense, which is really what Arsenal have missed.
Yeah, that was it's a great point, because I think he's got so much appreciation for the ball. He every pass and every when he receives the ball and when he gives the ball, he knows exactly how it should feel. So when he's giving the ball, he wants to make that ball perfect for the other person to receive it. Yeah. And so when he's speeding up the play so fast,
it's telling the winger,
play me now, and then the actual execution of the pass is just so much better because of how. So it feels like every pass that flows to and from him is perfectly weighted, and everything's just flows really nicely. It's like he's listening to Hans Zimmer. Just
if you talk about the United quotes where they're overthinking, it's the opposite.
It's the opposite. It's everything's off the cuff for him. And he doesn't need to think about it. And just a brilliant player. He's back now for Arsenal. There's no doubt that we'll see an improvement, especially against the low block teams. And
Timber, Calafiori arriving.
Yeah. And the back four in this game was Calafiori, Gabriel Saliba, Timber. Injury crisis high. Yeah, that was incredible. And all of them are really good players, and they make Arsenal play better. And that's probably Arsenal's best back four. Moving on to Liverpool, Southampton. We're only going to touch on this briefly because me and you didn't.
I'll be honest, it's an extended highlights.
Yeah, it's an extended. I watched about 30 minutes of this game. So what I noticed inside the 30 minutes was that Russell Martin persisted with this style of bringing it out from the back, and
he will never change.
He will never change. And we spoke about the pragmatic approach versus the live and die by it kind of approach. A ridiculous amount of turnovers in his own box. I thought, from what I've seen, Tyler Dibbling again was.
I mean, Tyler Dibbling is top. Yeah,
he's just he just breezes. It
reminds me a bit of. I don't know if this is a weird shout. I went to the game, the City game against Southampton in the ground, and just watching him in the stadium, it reminded me of Villa Grealish.
That's the thing. It's the low socks. He's got the low socks. Yeah,
but also the way he carried it and drove through the centre of the pitch. And
he doesn't run at top speed with the ball.
No, yeah,
he just taps it,
which is quite Grealish, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's Grealish just used to do this thing where he taps it in the middle.
Yeah,
and then he doesn't actually ever get up to full, but you just can't get it off him.
Yeah.
And it's so weird, and it's what's going on?
Yeah.
And there was a moment on the right hand side where there was a guy on his shoulder, and I was thinking, he needs to like run with the ball, and he just then just got through.
Yeah.
And I was just like, that doesn't make any sense. And yeah, he's brilliant. I think he's one of probably the bright spark of the Southampton team.
Yeah, I think Southampton, if I'm just going to briefly touch on them, they, as much as they're prioritising technical quality in there, with such a high risk approach, there's going to be errors. I think some of the errors are just born out of like frustration and naivety.
Paul and Awachu as well.
Oh, well, this is what I was going to say.
Jesus. You talk about an outball in that game.
Yeah.
And I just feel like, what's the point in playing him? Like, obviously, he's got better back to goal play than like an Adam Armstrong or like in terms of being physical and holding it up and chest out. But like, if you're not going to use him for being a brick wall and pinning a centre half, and he's probably like one of the only centre forwards who's bigger than Van Dijk. And it's like, why would you not use him? And it felt like it's just a frustrating thing to see because he clearly played well in the minimal actions. He had the minimal touches, and he brought everyone into play, and they did have chances to break through.
I think for Southampton, they need to, I think, prioritise a bit more physicality.
Yeah.
As much as, look, you got Lallana in there and things like that.
Yeah.
Look, in their fullback positions, in the central midfield positions, you need a bit more physicality if you're going to survive the league, and that's what.
I think they've got it as well. They just don't play it.
100%.
That's what I mean. Because they've got Thingy from Chelsea.
Ogwachoku.
Yeah. They've got him. They've got Paul and Awachu. They've got Tyler Diblin, who's physical in terms of bouncing off players.
I think you pair
Howard
one
Bellis.
of them with Howard player Howard Bellis. You pair one of them with Lallana, and look.
That Mateus Fernandes is really physical as well, like really strong running box to box. So Flynn Downs is really good in there.
Yeah.
And you just don't, that's what I mean, they just don't play on it. And I feel like because they've tailored it so much that it's playing out from the back.
But you can play out from the back and still be physical.
Yeah.
Like Ipswich and Southampton, they're sort of, we compare them because they're both towards the bottom of the league. But I think Ipswich have
the right blend.
Yeah, in their intentions. And Southampton, look, they have good build-up play and look, they can keep the ball and progress it against pressure, but you can't survive in the duels, and they're making errors in there anyway. So,
yeah, I thought it was. Before we move on, I thought that Liverpool weren't amazing from what I've seen. It was a lot of like slow possession around the Southampton edge of the box, but again, we saw the high risk, high reward from the high pressure. Obviously, it got the Dominic Szoboszlai goal, and while Southampton did
high
play
pressure,
into
but also
it,
just like
while Southampton did play into it, obviously good from slot to go really high up against them and not drop off and let them have the ball like we've seen Liverpool do recently. But a lot of gifted goals. All three goals.
I don't know why they didn't reset. Like you have the ball, your team are just in a weird situation. And
Alex McCarthy was getting the ball, and instead of like when the keepers take 10 seconds and they everyone get into, he was just rolling it to the closest player. And Liverpool
attacking team anyway. So look, what are your principles? If you're going to play quickly, like
if you're going to play out from the back, at least just put everyone in the right position before then we play. But it was just like, now let's go. But they were playing so slow whilst they were doing it, and I'm like,
if you're going to play quick, like I would assume you'll go long or you play more direct for
juxtaposition football, man. Juxtaposition football. But yeah, I think Liverpool again, brilliant. Like knocking teams for 6 every single time.
Game changes in each
part, there's game changes in there. Again, Salah 2 goals. We've spoken about Salah enough. There's not really much to say about Liverpool. It is they're not doing much. Like
they're probably getting results a little bit better than their performances.
Yeah,
but people always talk about, is it sustainable, is it not? When you've got quality,
it's always.
I learned this from watching Klopp teams and saying they're unsustainable. But when you've got quality in top players, they can sustainably overperform the general performance. So I think, Liverpool. I don't think we're going to see a sharp fall off anytime soon.
No,
but it does depend a lot on Salah's form and fitness and things like that.
We're going to move on into a couple of the extra talking points from the weekend just before we wrap up. So, Leicester Forest, Jesus. Leicester City have sacked Steve Cooper.
Leicester Forest as a team will be.
I know.
Get body. Fine. What was the score again?
So they lost 2-1 to Chelsea.
Oh yeah.
Leicester, but they ended up sacking Steve Cooper directly after the game. It said in the article from the Telegraph, it said it was an individual who made the decision. It wasn't like a massive decision internally in the club, and that Steve Cooper was shocked, obviously.
After an international break,
I think the word was. Yeah. I just think they're gonna have someone lined up. It's painfully obvious because you don't make a rash decision like that.
Yeah.
But Leicester had financial trouble coming into the season. They were facing a points deduction this season as well, coming into it with the financial fair play and PSR. They virtually spent no money in the summer.
No.
They didn't really replace
Dewsbury
Hall. And yeah, they lost, I think one of the strikers went out on loan. I just think they're not in the drop. They've done better than I think people expected early doors. And it just felt like a very strange sacking. And I don't really like it. It's a bit distasteful.
But I think it's weird if, like, prior to the season, you go through all these hoops, whoever's making the decisions, or, you know, they go through different managerial candidates, and you land on Cooper, and after 12 games you sack him. I think that's a failure in the process of the club, like top down, who's making the decision. So
They were getting booed at home, Leicester, because there was no pressure on the ball against Chelsea.
Yeah.
But you need to realise that was what was going to happen. Like the connection with the club.
By the way, if you do put pressure on the ball against Chelsea, they're pinging it in.
Yeah. Nicholas Jackson spinning you, and then it's
Palmer
over.
To Madueke.
So it's don't like it from Leicester. It felt like a rushed appointment that the fans didn't like straight away.
One thing I'll quickly mention is if you're going to make an appointment from one manager to another, and they replaced Maresca, who played in the Championship, so you've got beautiful attacking football. To follow on from that, you're going to probably play pragmatic football to survive.
To survive in the league.
But the difference in styles is going to make the fans turn off way quicker.
Yeah.
So it's always a matter of looking at that.
They just didn't take to him straight away, the fans, because I think Graham Potter was available, and they kind of wanted to go from the segue between Maresca and Potter is a lot easier than with the Cooper.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, you just knew what you were going to get as a board. There was no way you were expecting him to go again using that style. And I've still seen Leicester play decent football away against Arsenal. I remember seeing them get into a good structure, playing really well. And I don't know, it just a bit distasteful for me. I didn't really like it. And then, obviously, on the other flip side, the ex-Leicester manager's absolutely flying.
Top.
Again, just brilliant. Not really much. He had a little bit of a tweak in this game.
Well, yeah, Enzo Fernandez played. Felix played as well. We saw, generally, I've got some notes here actually.
Should probably read these.
Yeah, I've been holding this for about the whole episode. I said, I've actually got stuff written in here. But obviously we've seen sort of a general 3-2 shape. Yeah. Lavia obviously out now. Enzo Maresca's talked about Felix a lot in press conferences. I think he really likes Felix. He wants to try and get him in the team and play him a lot more. Felix, I'm really impressed by his pressing and his back pressing, where he runs and a lot of energy in there. You get him, you got Palmer, and you also got Enzo playing sort of as those 3-10s behind Jackson, and then also with the freedom to kind of drop in and support. I saw on occasion Palmer coming out to these wide areas, and then you still had Felix and Enzo in those pockets, which still keeps the bodies in there. I think we've talked about Chelsea in the past as being able to progress, but not having enough bodies in that final third near the box.
To penetrate,
Enzo tried to crash the box a little bit more. Enzo Fernandez, that is. Enzo Maresca said...
Maresca wasn't it? He was on the touchline.
Maresca said in a press conference that, look, he wants Fernandez to get in the box a little bit more. But I thought it was a really nice tweak. It was a general 3-1 setup, a 3-1-6 setup, which, again, it can be susceptible to counter-attacks, but I think they had Badiashile, Colwill.
I think Fofana played full-back.
Fofana, but it was a 3.
And then he tucked, so it made
sort of very physical.
Yeah, physical, pace. Spoke about Chelsea's like height issues in past things. Maybe potentially played a fullback, a centre-back at fullback and getting the thing. So it's, again, another tweak from Enzo Maresca that just seems to be working.
And the right team to play a 3-1-6 against as well.
Yeah, against such a considerably deep block.
Exactly.
It made a lot of sense. And really good from Enzo Maresca. He started so well at Chelsea. I think the squad management has been the overriding net positive for me that I've realised. But the way his teams are playing are brilliant. I wanted to touch on Nicholas Jackson just before I move on to one last point before we wrap. He's brilliant, isn't it?
Unreal, yeah. There's always these conversations, look, who's the right striker for Chelsea kind of thing. Yeah. Look, as much as his overall game was brilliant, he's popping up with goals consistently.
Poacher goals.
Yeah, like his finish, against Leicester, really nice. Enzo Fernandez actually supporting him really high up the pitch, and we've talked about what's Enzo's best role kind of thing. Pochettino actually used him as a higher up player.
Yeah.
And he got a lot of flack for it, but we're seeing Enzo Maresca do the same thing, and both good coaches in how they profile players. So if they're both seeing Enzo Fernandez as somebody who can play a little bit higher and support the striker, and we saw him get an assist for Jackson's goal, how he spun, how he linked with another player, I think is a really strong quality of his. Then good profiling, but also a brilliant sort of central player to play all these creative players off of.
Yeah, I just think that everyone always looks at Chelsea and goes like, oh, if they had a Victor Osimhen or they had a Vlahovic,
I love that.
And they go, oh, they'd be like 25 goals, and it makes them such an infinitely better team. But he makes the team play better. And I think when you
and your
if
wingers
you lose
and your
him,
10s still stretch the pitch, I think.
Yeah, I think if you lose him, you lose the link between the teams and what he's able to do. His Anfield performance was brilliant, sensational, complete centre forward performance. Yeah, I just think he's really good.
I wouldn't look to replacing him anywhere near the top of the list.
No, I was such a fan of him when he joined because he was like a winger, inside forward coming in from Villarreal, and he had like this really unique skill set where he looked clumsy, but he was actually really technically brilliant.
I went to Chelsea West Ham last year, and he was picking up like his central midfield position and just carrying it all the way up the field.
Yeah, no, he's
alone.
No, he's just brilliant, and I think he's a great character. And some of his celebrations are like such a likable dude.
Yeah.
And he's got all these memes coming out. It's just brilliant, and I think I agree with you totally. He's the Chelsea number 9, and he probably should. Yeah, he probably should stay that way. And then just before we finish off, I wanted to touch on Matheus Cunha, who's now got the 5th most goal involvements this season, behind Mohamed Salah, Erling Haaland, Cole Palmer and Bukayo Saka. He's on 10 for the season in 12 games, and he's very, very good. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is I wanted to ask you a question. Do you believe that Matheus Cunha is the best player outside the Big Six?
I mean, he's up there.
He's got to be up there. I'm trying to think of all the players that are about, because there's obviously Newcastle have got about 3 of them.
Well, Guimaraes.
Yeah, Guimaraes.
I like Gordon, Isaac. Who else
it's very tough. Obviously, you've got Brighton. João Pedro was sensational this weekend.
Mitoma. I've always loved
Mitoma. Even Danny Welbeck.
Yeah. The thing is, you know what? The quality in the league is at such a high level. Like you'll always, like West Ham, for as many struggles as they've had this season, like they've got so many players that could play.
It's just an interesting question, because I think when I've watched him this season, his goal catalogue this season, and some of his assists, I'm just like,
and they're playing with like he's not getting a million chances a game. Do you know what I mean?
No, and then they played Lamina at centre half, and Gary O'Neill was speaking about how Lamina plays centre half, and he's working on this pattern where they'd run in behind to the space for Cunha's first goal. And the way he takes it, I'm like, that's not. He made it look so easy.
Yeah, like how's that programmed kind of thing? Yeah,
it's him and Jackson's finishes are really similar, like the way they kind of lifted it and poked it into the top of the net. But no, I think he's definitely up there.
Yeah,
I think Newcastle will probably edge him out in terms of the players who they've got. But this season, I would say for sure, he definitely is knocking on the door. And they did pay quite a lot of money for him.
Yeah,
so there's no surprise.
I feel like normally these kind of signings, they don't land as this has. But
nice
to see. João Gomez.
Flipping
love João Gomez. Since the Brazil days. So yeah, good to see him play in his own and kind of excel in that way. But Cunha's certainly the main man for this team, I'd say.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to see Gary O'Neill get 3 points on the board away from home, because
tough season.
Tough season for him, and they've got really nice players, and they're now starting to build something which is obviously only good for the league.
Yes. Not for us though.
I know, not for you. Have you got a goal to Mal in you? Oh no, you've won there. Johnny Stones with the
ropey performance.
It's tough, that one.
Every game,
when Sellers.
Even the games we've won, it's been a long day.
No, long season. Right, thank you very much for watching this week's Overlap Breakdown podcast. If you're listening on streaming platforms, please rate us 5 stars if you did enjoy. And if you're on YouTube, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. And we'll see you next week for another podcast.